Reject Nation, I just wanted to hop in here real quick and say thank you to all of you who watched our very first episode of Diary of a Real Reject. That's right. I've already rebranded it because it just sounds better, and a top comment really convinced me I should have gone with my original title. Might as well rebrand this early on. But seriously, thank you to all who watched our first episode. To pass 80K on the very first episode to me is an amazing debut. So thank you all very much. And thank you to all who clicked on this video, because this interview, this sit-down discussion with Kevin Tancharoen is a conversation I've wanted to have for a few years now. I've been friends with Kevin for quite a while, but there's so much about his career that I've never actually talked with him about, despite the amount of time I've actually spent with him. Have it like documented on camera to me is really cool. One of the few things that I have talked with him about off camera that we don't really go into during this interview, which I probably should have now thinking about in hindsight, because even though I've talked about it with him, it would have been good for the audience. I'm still learning. I already rebranded the title. What a lot of you guys might not know is he created the short film Mortal Kombat Rebirth, which spawned into this live action Mortal Kombat series, which really played a massive influence in the Mortal Kombat medium. A lot of people really believe that if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have the live action films that we have today. So it not just only revitalized Mortal Kombat in live action, it also revitalized Mortal Kombat as a brand. So it's one of those filmmakers that I really do think deserves a lot more credit. And we dive into so much in this interview. There's video chapters if you guys want to hop around or just listen to it from beginning to end, the preferred way. Regardless, leave a like, enjoy. And thank you again to Multihouse, our producing partners on this. And thanks again to The Preserve for letting us shoot there. The largest urban jungle in Los Angeles, home to over 6,500 plants and trees. Beautiful place. Thank you guys. Enjoy. I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
I was telling your wife this because we're friends due to, your wife's been one of my best friends since I was like 12 or something like that. Yep. Even though you've known her way longer than I have, surprisingly. I was like, I think I've maybe spent like an hour in total alone with Kevin in the entire time.
Is that true?
I think I can count it. One time we were going over some random story together that I won't say just out of protection.
Okay.
And then the other one was we were on the phone for a little bit together for like 20 minutes going over notes on something.
Yeah.
We rode in the car to set for something. I rode with you at like 5 in the morning.
Oh yeah, for Brother's Son.
For Brother's Son.
That's
I
right.
can say that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, over there. And I'm pretty sure that's the most alone time that we've had together.
Yeah, because it's always been in a group.
Yeah, it's always been in a group, or I'm there with you and Ashley the entire time.
Right.
So this is the first time I'm like, hey, I get to be alone with Kevin and see if we just get along. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we just get along. We tend to get along every time we hang out with each other.
Of course.
And I know everyone pronounces your last name wrong. What is and to this day, I forget how to pronounce your guys' last name.
It's just Tancharoen.
Tancharoen. I thought that's what it was. But
it's actually, I mean, listen, the Thai pronunciation is different, and I don't even really truly know how to say it properly. But as far as the way people just say it here in the States, it's Tancharoen. And it's super long, but if you read it, it actually is like phonetically spelled out.
No.
So it's, a lot of people get like Tancharoen.
That's how I used to say it.
Yeah, people used to call me Tarantula in high school.
Is that triggering?
No, not at all. I mean, it's not so bad to have a nickname called Tarantula. That's actually not so bad.
Are you related to Jessica? That was my whole life.
And you're like, no.
I wish. I wish I was related because she's hot. Yeah, that'd be cool. Related to someone so hot. Guys, if you don't know Kevin's body of work, I just have his IMDb pulled up because I cannot remember all this shit. There is just so much here. And I was telling Kevin beforehand, I was like, I've known you for several years and I haven't actually dived into your filmography.
That's good.
Until like last night. I was like, I should probably prepare a little bit of information. And I was like, I had no idea you worked on this much stuff. So going through the legacy of everything. Mortal Kombat Legacy, you did Mortal Kombat Rebirth,
that's right,
short film, but then you've also directed episodes of Supergirl, Iron Fist, Prison Break, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Inhumans, Arrow, The Flash, several episodes, including the first episode of Crisis on Infinite Earths, right?
That's right.
Titans, Warrior, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a lot of episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Book of Boba Fett. I remember people actually really liking the episode you did of Book of Boba Fett, specifying that for a reason. and Brother Son, of course. You're one of 2 main directors for that, right?
Yes.
And then now the new series for Peacock, a horror series produced by James Wan called Teacup.
That's right, October 10th.
October 10th, and I will watch this one.
I hope so.
I saw A good amount of brothers.
Yeah, good. There you go. You saw that. I think that's all. Out of everything you just named, that's probably the only thing you've seen.
I've seen him.
Oh, you saw Boba Fett.
I saw Boba Fett. I had a camera pointed at me when we saw Boba Fett. John's here. John saw all of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's seen your work.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And it is fun because I remember, like, I saw all the Flash. I've seen all those DC shows.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I would see your name pop up. I'd be like, oh, I know that guy.
Yeah, the whole Vancouver universe that they created over there. It was that whole situation was incredible that they were able to mount something on that scale to create like a DC CW universe that was actually a lot of fun and it was good. It felt like something I would have been obsessed with when it was around 13 to 15 or because of all the fun. It felt like X-Men, the animated series, but live action.
Yeah.
So it was just a blast to work on. They're hard to work on though, because superhero costumes don't look good during the daytime. So it just looks like people cosplaying in leather jackets. So we have to wait for night, and you shoot all night in Vancouver, and you just kind of get used to it. But it does look better at night.
Well, you had the episode, if I'm not mistaken, that first episode of Crisis on Infinite Earths was the one when they switch, right? Barry and Oliver switch.
I had the Freaky Friday, and it was great. Stephen Amell, it's really fun, but he's always playing this brooding, angry version of Arrow. So to have him get more into his comedy chops and put on the red Flash suit, it was hilarious, and he was completely game for it.
Do you feel the pressure when it comes to something like that? Because that was an event TV series. I remember I wasn't even really into the DC shows just yet, but when that trailer came out, everyone was talking about they're actually doing Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was a 4-part event. I remember that being a huge deal.
Yes.
And you're helming the first episode of that. Do you feel the pressure of that when you're making it?
I think, I always feel a bit of the pressure, but when it came to a lot of those shows, I was already such a fanboy just growing up in general with all these types of characters. So I was way more excited than most to shoot something like that just because it was everything that I grew up loving. But yes, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of personalities to deal with. It's a lot of work, and the cast is super large. And they're exhausted because they work them to death on those shows. If they're not doing their own series, they have to come and do a crossover here and then go right back to set on something else. But so they're troopers, and it's really hard, and you just have to try your best to facilitate all that and also make it as epic as you can.
Would you hang out with any of them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of them I see Katie Lotz every now and then. Grant was awesome. Steven was great. Melissa was awesome on Supergirl too, and so was Callista. I mean, everyone was really nice. We all get tired at 4 a.m. At a certain point, and I'm not the one wearing a really tight, uncomfortable suit. So you got to forgive everyone if they get a little anxious and angry, because I would be too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird here. I've talked to you about so many things over the years. And I'm actually diving into your work that you've done. I'm like, I feel like I should have just asked all these questions in our private time.
I also forget how long it takes to put those superhero suits on.
Sure.
I have been always saying there should just be a short film about the time Batman or Superman not Superman, he's too fast, but he gets the call.
Yeah.
And then has to go and save the person.
So every actor I hear about that talks about putting on, that's always the biggest complaint from every actor.
Not comfortable.
When they talk about it being a very uncomfortable experience. And you find that to be very true when you're working on these things.
Yeah, because it's not just two pieces. It's a whole thing. And it's pretty tight. If you want to go to the bathroom, it's not easy. So the short film would basically be I got the call. He's putting on the suit. And by the time he's done with the suit, that person's dead. It just takes forever. He shows up and it's just over.
So these are the original films that you want to be all the network TV. You're like, I got a pitch.
I got a pitch for you.
I got one I'm working on right now.
It's an art piece about how complicated it is to put on a superhero suit.
It's time consuming. You talked a lot about in interviews of being, and by saying a lot of interviews, I mean, I saw 2 last night.
Yeah.
And you were talking about your influences growing up. And I was like, oh, it'll be interesting to talk about that. And the question I like to ask people when we start these, which is the question I did not ask you when we started this, is who was your celebrity crush growing up? Was it a actor or was it a character? Can you say who it is?
My Buffy.
It was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, really?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up to that kind of golden era of that WB the time where it was just about sexy people doing things, what was it like? What was the lineup? It was like Buffy,
Angel.
It was Angel and Dawson's Creek and all. So I think between Katie Holmes and Sarah Michelle Gellar, those were my childhood crushes.
That's so funny because you married a blonde girl.
That's right. Yeah.
A rather tough, honest blonde girl.
Yeah, she's super tough. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the toughest girl you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
I mean, no, she's honest though. She's a very honest person, and that's to me, there's a strength in that.
Oh, 100%. She's the best.
What was it about like Sarah Michelle Gellar as Buffy that you were particularly drawn? Was it just the physicality? Was it the fact that she was a fighter?
I thought it was the character was fun, and she was rough around the edges for that time period, I guess. And she was a superhero in her own way. And it was the first time I think I really saw that on television. Like, I can't name something before that I can say that was holding their own in that kind of way at that age. So that was something that I also just love genre stuff. So it was kind of a mix of all of that. I got a chance to work with Eliza Dushku, who was fantastic also. And I tried to talk to her about Buffy. And, I have some family members that are part of the Whedon clan. So I tried to talk about it too. But that was a huge show for me growing up.
You feel like the way you talk about it, it sounds like it actually influenced you in some way.
It did. I mean, because of the action and the mix of narrative, it was just an extension of things that I think I grew up loving naturally. And there was genre.
Yeah.
And for my age at the time, the teenager part of it appealed to me. It was like relatable, even though, none of us are slaying vampires after high school. But it's wish fulfillment. I think at the end of the day, it was just like pure wish fulfillment.
Yes, actually, you saying Buffy sounds very apt from stuff we've talked about so many times because, you've worked on a lot of action stuff, but whenever we talk about anything, it's horror.
Yeah,
We primarily talk about horror films together. And Buffy, I've only seen the first, Olivia, my wife, she showed me the first 4 seasons. I've only gone there.
Oh, doesn't she love Buffy?
She loves Buffy.
Yeah,
Loves
I never
Buffy
watched Angel, but I heard good things about that too.
Yeah, don't talk slander.
No.
I've heard good things about Angels.
I've heard great things.
I've heard great things. Angel's good. Yeah, I know. But yeah, Buffy is like an action horror show.
She is, yeah.
And it seems like for you, whenever we talk, I'm excited to see Teacup because of the fact that it is, even when looking through the filmography, I can't really find anything that's like directly so horror as Teacup is. No,
this is the first time that's specifically more horror driven. It's, it's also a mystery and it's a thriller. And I think this genre is something I've always wanted to do. Just when I was younger, I actually wanted to be Stan Winston. So my way into loving film was via horror. So I used to just...
What was the horror films that influenced that you saw growing up?
I mean, I think it's pretty cliche to say, but American Werewolf in London then led me to The Howling, and then Legend, and then obviously the first Terminator. So they Pumpkinhead. So they were a lot of creature features, but a lot of makeup prosthetic work that I fell in love with. And that was my career path that I wanted for myself, because when I was young enough, I was lucky to go and visit the companies that designed the aliens for up until Alien Resurrection, I believe, and Stan Winston's studio. And it just kind of blew my mind. I mean, as a kid, I have so many action figures, so what's better than just a giant one? And I have to give a lot of props to Child's Play, too. That gave me a lot of inspo as well.
It's funny, when you said it sounds like a cliche answer, you said the one thing that I think everyone would say. You didn't say the one thing that I think everyone would
What is it?
The Thing.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if you compare the practical effects on that one to they did a sequel that was primarily all computer generated. I think the first one holds up better. And I'm sad to hear that, like, even in the one with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, they built all of them. Those were they did, but then they put CG over them, which was I would say I would love to see the cut where it was just the practical effects, because they were very well done. If you can watch it on YouTube now, yeah.
How old were you when you saw like American Werewolf in London?
I was young. So my parents, it's just a different generation. Like back then, I was allowed to watch kind of anything because I knew
it
wasn't real.
In like an Asian household?
Yeah, I know. Like I watched The Exorcist when I was like 5.
Really?
And maybe it scarred me.
Were your parents religious?
No.
And they did? Oh, okay. So,
no.
All right.
So it was just, a fun thing to watch together. I remember seeing Dusk Till Dawn in the theater with my mom.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That was fun.
So it got very weird when they got to the titty twister, you know. But it was that's another one that inspired me too, though, because of Tarantino and Rodriguez were kind of like my teenage kind of inspirations.
That lines up.
Yeah.
That lines up for anyone who's into film around our age. You're like, Tarantino, Rodriguez, and the rest.
Yeah. I remember I had a cool enough teacher in 6th grade where everyone was doing like an autobiography on somebody. A lot of people picked historical figures, kind of low-hanging fruit, and I just straight up asked my teacher if I can do it on Tarantino, and she allowed me to. I doubt you'd be allowed to do that in 2024 because I had to give like an oral presentation about his filmography. But she was cool. She was a movie lover, and she taught us similes and metaphors and all that stuff via Star Wars.
Oh, cool.
So she was great. She was instrumental to a lot of things. And her name was Mrs. Russell, and she was fantastic.
Did you start off your essay with, let me tell you what Like a Virgin's about?
You know, at that time, like it was, what was it? It was Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction. Those were the two that I mainly made the report about. And
That's
with
fun.
Rodriguez, it was Once Upon a Time in Mexico and Desperado, and so it was great.
You know, it's funny to hear that you weren't, because I wasn't censored either really growing up.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to violence, I really wasn't censored. Like the movies I grew up watching, the ones I watched like religiously were The Crow and Scream.
Yeah,
Those
violent.
They were like hard R violence, of course. It's sometimes when it came to like things that were a little too sexual, they would like half-heartedly. I saw Species in the theaters with my dad when I was like 6 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it is so interesting that like violence is fine, but when it comes to that, it gets a little
The thing
dicey.
all of us will experience.
Yeah. I mean, Species was like the most like erotic horror creature feature.
Yeah.
You know, that was mainstream.
Yeah.
I saw that and it was great. It was things like one of Michelle Williams' first standout roles.
That's right. She plays young Natasha Henstridge at the beginning.
And
of
then
it.
she like crawls into the train bathroom and becomes like this weird cocoon. It was, I love that movie. I have a lot of fond memories of that movie.
Yeah, as you should. Yeah. The reproductive alien movie. Yeah.
But that's another H.R. Geiger inspiration.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, the eroticism.
Exactly.
Behind the anatomy,
Yeah. So, you know, I think they were like, oh, it works for Alien, so let's try it on this one. And it works. It really was inspired by all of the H.R. Geiger stuff.
Did you have a movie that you would watch with your family a lot growing up? Because I don't know your parents that well.
It was never like one thing that we watched a lot. We just kind of watched a lot of movies. You know, obviously our blockbuster Hollywood video nights were epic, and I looked forward to those. But I also consumed television every day, like just because I wanted to. And Saturday, I mourn the loss of Saturday morning cartoons. I wish that was still a thing because the lineup on Fox was great. Killer. It was so good. And then the golden era of like Nickelodeon animation, which was more adult if you look at it now, like Ren and Stimpy and Hey Arnold or Rocko's Modern Life. Like those are really cool cartoons that are not pandering to children.
Oh yeah, that's very true.
So I grew up in all that Don Bluth. You know, you don't really see a Don Bluth style storytelling necessarily in children's animation anymore because it's a bit scarring. I mean, that scene with the mother in A Land Before Time was epically sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, epically sad. But I'm glad that was available to me when I was younger because it clearly inspired me on my career path.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool how non-restrictive they actually were.
Yeah.
So are they like cinephiles too?
Yeah, they love movies. And I think that was a big reason why I even got into this is that we were all very enamored by movies. But specifically, I fell in love with the magic of how to make them. Like, so Ninja Turtles, the 1990 Ninja Turtles was, I think, my first blush into seeing like a behind the scenes of something. And then Terminator 2 Judgment Day also had a VHS behind the scenes.
Yeah,
and
they had a lot of stuff,
and Thriller had a behind the scenes. So I was starting to see, oh, that's how they did this with the bladders here and on the werewolf face, or with Ninja Turtles, it was practical mask with the puppet, Jim Henson's puppetry. And I was like, this is fantastic. So I was obsessed with Ninja Turtles. So the 1990 movie holds a very special place to me. I like the second one too, but that first one, I'm shocked they got away with making it because it is not a kid's movie.
It's dark.
It's dark.
Yeah.
I feel like at the time, the people who greenlit that movie didn't really understand what was going on. So they just let like the director and their team do whatever
Yeah.
they wanted, because it was a hard-boiled crime drama about kid gangsters and torturing a giant rat.
Gangs and
Yeah, it was, and I think Tatsu even like kills one of the kids as an example.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't remember Sam Rockwell offering cigarettes.
That was Sam Rockwell. I remember that scene.
Yeah, he's like menthols. Yeah.
Oh, that was Sam Rockwell?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that being Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, it was like one of the
He's been typecast
iconic
this whole time.
roles. Yeah, I remember
Ninja Turtles.
all
That's
of
that
that.
guy.
I mean, the whole thing was about teenage crime, and then the turtles being teenagers themselves and messy. So I hope that when they do, like, my favorite iteration of Turtles that have come out recently was Mutant Mayhem.
That was awesome.
I loved it. And I actually went to elementary school with Benji Samit. So that who wrote it, he's great. He recently just did Rebuild the Galaxy, and it's so good. You know, it's a Lego movie for Star Wars,
awesome.
and it's great. And his partner, Dan Hernandez, is awesome. So that's been my favorite iteration because they brought a lot of the edge back.
They felt like real teenagers.
Yeah,
too.
they actually did. They actually felt like kids. And, you know, it was genius to have Jackie Chan play Splinter because he was hilarious.
Best role in years he's done in the States.
I know. So I've heard they're doing Last Ronin or the Ronin series. I just hope they tackle that with as much weight as the 90s one did.
So when you've said like you've grown up on like certain fandoms and comic books and such,
Yeah.
and obviously Ninja Turtles, these horror action movies. What were the comic books that you read?
Well, I was really into finding newer material, and at that time, Image Comics was coming out for the first time. So Spawn.
Oh, cool.
Was a big one, which has got a lot of horror elements to it. I think it was either maybe the first one where they had the clown, and then there was another one with an ice cream man. It was dark. I mean, they were basically serial killers out there, like impaling people with ice cream cones and keeping dead bodies in freezers. So that was one that really stuck out to me, not only because of the content was definitely intriguing because it was so dark, but the artwork was fantastic. And then also the figures that McFarlane put out were so iconic because they were like maquettes. They weren't like toys anymore. They were like model kits.
Yeah.
So that was something. X-Men obviously was I bought a ton of that. So between those were the main comic books that I really, and then Marvel, like a lot of Marvel stuff, I just kind of would browse and have on hand. There was a comic book store in the Valley called Comic Kid, which I would try to go to after school almost every day.
Oh, you would actually like hang out there.
Yeah,
So you've always been kind of like a visual absorbent kind of individual.
And I had the cards, like, so, you know, I have a lot of memorabilia.
Wow.
It's still stored in a garage somewhere that I'm hoping that one of these days I can display them, because all of my action figures have not been taken out of the package.
I know. I go there and it's like those Jackie Chan fight scenes with the antiques.
Yeah.
Like, just don't knock anything
Don't,
over.
don't touch anything. Yeah. But yeah, I went to my parents' house, and in the garage they still have a bunch of the stuff that I bought when I was a kid. And I found all of these toys that have not been opened because I wanted to maintain the collector's spirit.
Well, you directed at a very young age, if I'm not mistaken. What was the Britney Spears thing? I actually don't know what this whole history is.
So it's funny talking about all this movie inspiration, all the things that I grew up wanting to do, but then I ended up somehow in the music business.
You were a dancer and such.
I was a backup dancer. I originally did dancing for a hobby. Like, it was just something fun to do. And then while I was here in LA, I might as well get a little extra cash for what I considered would be for college. So, I would run to different auditions here and just kind of get a Nike industrial or a Fox Kids commercial, but anything too serious. But as I kept going, I got a gig to dance for, Britney Spears in 1999 when she was still on the cusp of blowing up. It was a VMA performance with her and NSYNC. And ever since I did that one, I just kind of stayed within that world. And I worked with one of my best friends named Wade Robson was the choreographer. He brought me on as a mentor, and he really taught me.
Is he the one who married you?
Yes, he is. That's right.
Yeah.
He officiated our wedding.
Yeah.
And I owe a lot to him. He has taught me so many things along the way, so many skills, and he brought me on when he was choreographing and directing. So I got to witness what it would take to be in that spot eventually. And then eventually I got to direct and choreographed my own tour and music videos, you know. And so
What music videos?
I choreographed with my friend Columbus Short, Me Against the Music.
You did you choreographed Me Against the Music?
Uh-huh.
That was huge.
That was a big one. And then on tour, we did a couple other numbers like Boom Boom and I forget what else. Just a few of them. And then the choreographer that I worked with at the time to handle a lot of the other numbers was Brian Friedman, who's like iconic in the choreography world, still is. And he co-choreographed I'm a Slave for You with Wade.
Oh, cool.
So like I was around for all of these like iconic moments that have become pop culture now. But when I did my last tour, I directed the tour called the Onyx Hotel. I was 19.
Whoa.
And then I was like, I never wanted to be in the music business. So
pretty high up there.
But I will say that when you're like, 15 to 17, it's the coolest place to be. So
you were choreographing like this huge. That's huge. Me Against the Music at 17 years old.
I think, like 18, right? Yeah, something around that time.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was. Back then we didn't have social media. We had like a Canon Power Shot, and I had the Bubble iMac or whatever it was, and actually the only thing that would I had a Palm Pilot that somehow had service. I can send an email, and I thought that was sorcery. So what I appreciate about that time was that we were in the moment. Mm-hmm. We were actually there and like talking to each other and having experiences with each other and not trying to validate it all on Twitter or post everything that was going on to us.
Sure.
So a lot of my memories are because of like human peer-to-peer interaction, which was instrumental for me. I think in many ways my time as a choreographer mirrors a bit of what Cameron Crowe did, in Almost Famous. Because I was young and I was always a wallflower. I was never the big voice or anything. I was just kind of everyone's younger brother. I wasn't quite an adult. So I looked very young. So everyone kind of treated me as such. But yeah, after that, my first movie was Fame in 2008. And I was 23.
23 years old.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Well, I learned a lot. I was young and I really didn't know a lot. I definitely learned a lot during that experience. And it's crazy to think that yesterday was the 15th anniversary of the release, but a lot of great memories on that movie. And I learned so much, not only technically and storytelling wise, but also just politically, because that was the first time in the movie business, which is a business that I wasn't part of until then.
You've hopped around through a lot of different things just now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got questions about everything.
Okay, good.
I was a massive Britney Spears fan growing up. Massive Britney Spears fan. And I was like going to, John would know, like when you're at that time, it wasn't cool for a boy to be into Britney Spears. But I was
unless you had a crush on her.
I did, but I was like, no, I have her out. Like we would have like our family get-togethers, all my Filipino relatives, and then my cousin Jessica and myself would each be gifted the same exact Britney Spears thing, and I was the only boy getting like.
I was there too, though.
You had the greatest excuse.
Before I worked with her, though, I was a fan. I was a fan. I think I was already in the dance business, and she was known as like a dance artist. So, yeah, I was a huge fan, and it's so funny. Me and my group of core best friends were always very. Proud of being fans of like the Backstreet Boys, and we went to the Millennium Tour and we sang every song. Like it was fun. It was a fun period of time for music.
Well, you still had like a friends and a community of that.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
I didn't. I was isolated and made fun of, but I still love those old songs. But what did you learn? Was there anything from Britney Spears that you learned from her directly about that helped improve your ethics in any way, work ethic or discipline or anything like that?
Yeah, her work ethic was just really top notch. And I saw her, unfortunately, work herself so hard. That takes a toll after a while. And she's so kind. So that was something I learned from her, is the kindness within the storm of it all, is that at the end of the day, she was still, in her heart of hearts, a very sweet, kind, nice person. Mm-hmm. So that never changed, no matter how big she got. A lot of artists, when they get big, all of a sudden their attitude changes a bit. It did not with her. She still felt like Britney from Kentwood, Louisiana. And that was what I learned, is that even though people can gain success unlike you could possibly imagine, you can still be a good person in all of it too. Because in the music business specifically, you don't see a lot of that. You just don't really see that kind of genuine nature.
Yeah.
And I learned that from her, and just made sure I remembered that you don't have to fall victim necessarily to the kind of like mean streak of it all.
And when you were transitioning into the movie fame,
Yeah.
was there, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. When you, was there because all these things about like power dynamics and abuse are being exposed everywhere now. It's even in the music industry, like that's where the spotlight is. At the time of us filming this, that's where a lot of it is being really shown right now.
Of course. Yeah.
But you being a young director, were you having a difficult time kind of finding your own voice or establishing your own agency within doing this?
Yeah, like I think yes and no. I think a lot of the times people trusted a large part of what I was saying just because of my background and the story content within fame. But I will say there was a lot of pushback on certain things that like I would consider cool, but maybe the producers did not. And I just grew up with this people-pleasing gene. So I think I could have stood up for myself a lot more back then and like held my ground, but I was so afraid of not appreciating where I was, making sure that I was easy to work with. And I didn't want to be like a young, difficult guy, which was, you know, a tale as old as time, is the young, cocky guy coming in and then burning out because they were too cocky. I was very aware of all of those tropes, and I think I could have stood up for my own agency a lot more, just to retain the spirit of what I wanted the movie to be.
So, because I recall, I mean, bluntly speaking, it wasn't received the best, right?
No, and I totally understand why. You know, on a pure business level, it did make its money back, and people still find it, but so many things were cut out of the movie. You know,
out of your control.
That's completely out of my control. You know, for a rating or a different marketing
For a rating?
concept. Yeah, I mean, originally the original version was pretty much a hard PG-13.
Like borderline R.
Borderline, yeah. We were dealing with a lot of adult stuff, but we had to shift the rating, I think, to try and appeal more for a younger audience, to try and gather a larger audience. So unfortunately, there were a lot of scenes that just had to get dropped. And I learned a lot from that experience too, as far as just knowing my place, I think, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a huge learning experience. Was it tough in the aftermath to deal with that kind of what I considered a bit of a failure? It was hard at the time, but deeply necessary.
Well, you always learn from failure. That's the only way to learn.
I learned so much more from failure, and you got to fail God knows how many times before you have success. And I think that's just the beauty of it all.
Was that like in your career trajectory of growing up? Because it seemed like you were having, just from the outside hearing this, you're having all these like successes in the teen years, and then you get this movie, and then you're kind of hit with this feeling of failure. Was that like one of your monumental like learning failure moments?
Yeah. And, you know, and as you said, like, I agree, up until then, I had a good thing going. I did. And did I have an ego from that? Of course. I was young, and there were a lot of yeses coming my way, and everything that came out of that experience became huge. So I didn't really know what that kind of artistic failure was until fame. And that's why it was such a necessary yet deeply important time in my life, and specifically my career too, because I needed it. I needed to get knocked way down and figure out what that was and see if I had it in me to try to crawl back up, which led to Mortal Kombat, actually.
That's cool. Has there ever been someone you've worked with where you did find yourself having to get past the nerves a little bit?
Michelle Yeoh.
Oh, Michelle Yeoh, for a brother son.
Yeah, I think it's also just kind of this, I had such a huge respect for her, not only because of the career she carved out for herself. But a lot of her older movies are just so iconic. And I used to watch them all.
Like what?
Well, Silverhawk was one. All the ones she did with Jackie Chan. I think Crouching Tiger is the one that made her famous in the States. But she had such a massive career before. I remember learning that she was a dancer before. I thought that was super cool because at the end of the day, like really cool fight choreography is dancing. It is balletic in its own kind of brutalism. So when I learned that about her, I found something in myself there. So I respected it a lot more. So when I worked with her on Brother's Son, admittedly, I had to get rid of the nerves because I had to go pitch her the show with the show creators at a hotel and like telling her why she should do this role. And she was an icon to me. So it was, I was like, I don't know how to, and she, she's an Asian woman that I have, I think just this gene to really be respectful.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like, it's just like, I don't want to piss her off. I don't want to piss her off.
There's some familial thing that is going off in your brain.
It's like this subconscious thing. And her superpower is that within 5 minutes or less, she completely takes all those nerves off the table.
Yeah.
She becomes incredibly disarming, and you all of a sudden feel like she is a family member, like a cool auntie, pretty fast.
Cool.
So that was something that was great to witness and also feel, because it's funny how, and I won't name names, but like the bigger the stars, I've noticed that they are a lot kinder and more chill.
Really?
And sometimes when I have worked with stars that are not very big is where I see the attitude. So it's a very interesting dynamic that I don't really know how to fully intellectualize, but
that's kind of the inverse of what the cliche is usually interpreted to be.
Yeah, it is. I mean, listen, you're going to have your superstars that are problematic, but I've never worked with him, but I've heard the same thing with people like Anthony Hopkins, right? Like he's just there to do his job. He's very good at it. He doesn't complain. And you earn a lot more respect that way. The crew and the audiences, I think they can see that.
Did you ever see, I just remember this Michelle Yeoh movie I watched, Maggie Chung. It's called The Heroic Trio.
I've never seen that one.
It's like a martial arts superhero movie.
Really?
It's pretty awesome.
How old is it?
It's old. I saw it in the 90s.
Okay, because there was this video store on Ventura Boulevard called Toy Mandala that I used to go to all the time, and they had this section in the back where they were just importing movies before the internet. I could just type it in or whatever. And I never saw that there, but I got a handful of her movies from that store, and I've never heard of that one.
I've always been in such admiration of her because I feel like after post Matrix, a lot more actors have been doing their own stunts and fight scenes and stuff. But before Matrix, there was like Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh, and out there's also like Sammo Hung and Yuen Biao. And Michelle Yeoh, as well as like Cynthia Rothrock, I would say, they were these two women who were doing their own stunts. Like you watch Super Cop, and she is riding the bike on the train.
She's doing it.
She's doing it all, and
she's bursting through the pane glass, and
she is awesome. It's like she's always been such a badass to me.
That's right.
And to me, I like you mentioned Buffy. I grew up on Michelle Yeoh, and who else was there? There was like I was, Sarah Connor, you talked about like Terminator 2.
Of course.
And I think like usually when people are like badass women have always been around, Sarah Connor, Ripley, they are badass. But I'm like, but Michelle Yeoh though was a whole other story of that's a real badass. She's not just playing a badass. Like she has to do these own stunts. Well, doesn't have to, but she chose to.
No, she chooses to. And I think she was, brought up in that kind of training where that's the role you play. And, but like you said, after the Matrix, everyone decided they wanted to be Keanu. I mean, he is an example of someone who takes that shit seriously.
Yeah.
And it shows. Everyone says the nicest things about him. He couldn't be kinder, and he works his ass off when it comes to all of the martial arts, and he has a deep respect for it. So I appreciate when I can see that in other people. And Michelle Yeoh is, she's still doing it. I mean, she's still like doing a iconic role after iconic role, and I think the next one is going to be her in Wicked. So I'm very excited to. That's another thing about her is that a lot of the times when you when you see an action star and you're like, oh, but can they act? Like Michelle can act.
She can act. She mainly just acts.
Yeah, she
just won an Oscar.
yeah, she's like a really good. So she takes that craft very seriously as well. It just goes to show that her discipline.
I want to ask for the YouTube audience on Brother's Son. You had a couple people work on it. They were the ones in the 2-on-1 fight and Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes, the late brother.
Andy and Brian. They are awesome. If you guys haven't seen the Marshall Club channel, that's like their big start.
Yep.
So I remember when you told me, I was like, the Marshall Club. I was like so excited that they were on there. What was it like working with them?
They were great. I mean, talk about just energy. Great energy. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with both of them. They're super nice. They're super chill. They're very enthusiastic and becomes infectious. And they did a great job acting. Like they had a bigger role in that show, and they got to have a lot more lines, and it was really great to work with them. Those guys are really chill.
I met Brian like briefly, but Andy, I got to
Andy Moore, yeah.
I mean, when we went to an interview with him, they've seen our reactions to some of their stuff, and I think they were so impressed. Like they were the type of like people I watched just from this internet videos to where they are now, and like Shang-Chi. It's like, oh, this is so insane to see where they're at, and I really hope they get even bigger.
I think they will. I mean, that's just their work ethic also is unmatched, and they work their ass off. And Brian is super cool too. And I remember we had to ask Andy to dye his hair, and I was nervous about that because he'd got that iconic hair. I don't think he loved it, but he did it, and luckily it all worked out because they were definitely instrumental to the show.
I gotta say, we actually fun story for everyone. Kevin let me shadow him on set for 2 days for Brother's Son, and that was that made me go. Directing looks like a pain in the ass.
Well, you met Michelle.
I met Michelle briefly. Yeah. Oh, I took a photo. Actually, I never posted it again.
You should now.
I can now. I took a photo with Michelle. Kevin made sure I got one, and like a moron, I posted it for like 5 seconds, and then I immediately got a call like, "You can't post that." I was like, "My bad."
All good.
And I never reposted the photo this entire time.
Now.
Yeah,
you should now. I mean, that was a great day. You came on a really good day, and then you also came on a really late night.
Yeah, that was my intro. Because Kevin knows my main passion is writing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been interested in learning about how to direct. And so I was like, oh, let me just see if I could shadow. And they're like, cool, you're going to be here at 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. I was like, what?
I know.
And watching that was incredibly eye-opening into the hardship of it. And weirdly, the biggest takeaway I got from it was how nice you are to everyone there. As I've been around a lot of environments, I myself, like having to be in leading positions, I can get stressed and take it out. And I have to like be very mindful about the affect I'm having at the lead energy here when the cameras are not rolling, but like you're directing and everything. What do you think is, if you had to boil down the quality of being a leader on set, what would you think would be the most important quality?
I think respect, honestly, respect. Because that's the thing is that when you're, yes, there are stressful moments, but I think at the end of the day, I try to pull back and realize how lucky I am to have this stressful moment where I'm stressing about like a martial arts sequence taking too long, right? That's what I have to stress about. Or like a superhero is not hitting a pose perfectly. Like, come on, these aren't really stressful things. This should be fun. And everyone on set is there because they fell in love with movies first. So when you recognize that and you treat it more like a collaborative process, it is significantly more fun. Like making, when we were all kids, we made movies with our friends, like little silly things with a handy cam or whatever we had available to us. And I think people, when they get into the business, yes, a lot of the business is very, very, very serious. It does get very stressful. But you should still remember what you're doing. And every craftsman on that set is an artist too. So I really like, I don't like the sense, I've been on sets where somebody is definitely like, it's my way and only. And I think that works for certain people. I just know I don't know everything. And I appreciate hearing other people. So on set, when you have that collaborative spirit, I think everyone works harder because they want to be there because they feel respected.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like you you empower and you lean on other people's strengths. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest strengths that I've witnessed in a leader is knowing when you're wrong. Knowing that you don't have the answer and that someone else has a better answer. Because so often, when you're dealing with higher ups or massive producers, a lot of the times you get a note just for the sake of getting a note. Like they feel like they have to give a note.
Oh yeah.
And that's, I get it. I mean, all that executive world is something that I couldn't even begin to understand how stressful it is, because it's corporate and it's tough. You're trying your best not to get fired. So I know there's a lot of hard stress that comes from people in their position. But when I witnessed, like Brad Falchuk is actually a great example. He was open to hearing everyone's ideas. At the end of the day, he does make the final call. But he was great when he knew he didn't know and allowed other people to have the expertise. So I think that's a massive strength, is to know when you just don't know. You don't have to act like you know everything.
Have you ever had like an aha moment from listening to interviews with other directors or talking with the director directly?
I actually think a lot of that style of shooting came from when I was doing a lot of research and watching videos of Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when I worked with him on Book of Boba Fett, it was just kind of cemented how great of a leader he is and how infectious his movie lover energy just infects everybody. Because at the end of the day, I truly feel like he's one of the rare directors who is still making it because he loves it so much. It's like somewhat not political with him. He just wants to make things that he gets excited about. And that is something I think to strive for, because we just want to make movies. We want to make TV, and it's fun. And he was very respectful to everybody on set and took the time to hear everyone out. And I think I got a lot of inspiration from the way he worked. And also his book, Rebel Without a Crew, was very impressive, And
the way you talk about how to work with people on set reminds me a lot about what I've heard Vince Gilligan say.
Yes.
With Breaking Bad. I remember him saying the best idea wins.
Yes.
I remember you did something that made me feel very special one day, Kevin. you were doing in case you guys don't know, with actual filming, it was like even just more affirmed when I was on the set for that. Was like, wow, sometimes doing a 5-second shot can take hours to set up. Like just and you got to think about that for like a whole episode of television or a movie. And you're like, wow, that's insane. And there's like this one shot with someone playing with like a video game controller, and I was just next to you, and then you were saying like something's off about this shot, and then I suggested something. You let me suggest something, and then you applied it, and I was like, I gotta have one thing in here.
No, that's just.
I don't even know if the shot's in the show, but I remember.
But that's a good example of just you don't have to pretend you know everything. I think that's the wrong energy to put out there. At the end of the day, the goal is to just make it entertaining and make it good. And if someone can help you do that, then I don't know what the problem is.
That's really fair.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everyone's there because yes, it's a business, it's a way of life. They're making money, but if you got into that business, I do truly believe in some way in your past you fell in love with movies and specifically movie making. And I think you just have to honor that on set. Don't treat anyone like they're just doing this little thing for you. It's a big part.
Absolutely. I remember you did Book of Boba Fett. You did all these episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You seem to have this really great friendship with Ming Wen.
She's great. Yeah.
And did that start with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yeah, it started with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and then she just ended up becoming she felt like a relative. We would always have fun on episodes together. She'd come to family parties, and she's another one who is, she's iconic too. She's done so many things and big iconic roles. You meet her, and she's just like one of the nerds. Like that's the thing, is that she's just very fun. She makes you feel special. She's hilarious. and she's having fun, so you're having fun. Like, she gets a kick out of doing fight scenes, and unfortunately, every time she sees me, she reminds me. But she has gotten injured probably the most on the fight sequences that I've done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I feel really bad about that. It is an unfortunate situation, but they came out fantastic.
I did meet her. You introduced me to her briefly.
Yes.
I immediately told her. For some reason, I cite Street Fighter whenever.
Oh my God, yes.
And I know like Street Fighter has had this sort of. I feel like that movie in particular has had a so bad it's good quality.
Yeah, it's got a room like The Room.
Yeah.
You know, it's got the stories behind it. Also, just the story in general. Like who played Street Fighter and said this is what the movie should be. Like, I mean, I don't know, like it doesn't make any sense. But
she did have one of the best. She had one of. There's like one moment in there with Raul Julia where the whatever the Tuesday line is, like with the day your dad died talking. So she is part of like the one scene that has like the line that people actually like.
Love. And I remember even when I was a kid, I was like, what is this origin story with Blanca? Like, I don't understand what this is. And Dawson never fought. He was a scientist. I was like, what weird planet is this? A Street Fighter movie? Of course, I saw it 100 times.
I loved it.
I really did appreciate at the very end when they all hit their character poses.
For no reason.
No reason at all. It was great.
It was great. They even had that video game. Did you ever play it? It was the Street Fighter where
the live action
they
one?
got the actors to be in it. And for some reason, it's supposed to be exactly like Street Fighter, the game, but it's worse for some reason. It's just like not good.
That's not what you fell in love with as the game. I mean, Mortal Kombat is the one that set its claim at like the live action.
Yeah.
Like the first two or three, I don't know. They were all like live action capture. But still to this day, I think the best Street Fighter adaptation has been the anime.
Yes.
The animated movie.
Yeah, that's bad. I remember Ken and Vega fighting. Vega and Chun.
Oh, yeah. Vega and Chun-Li.
Chun-Li. Yeah, that was great.
There was some gratuitous Chun-Li in that movie, the rated R version.
Yeah.
But it was a great movie.
That's the one where like Ryu spends like 20 minutes doing a Hadouken, like trying to figure out how to like.
Yeah, and also it was just the found family story.
Yeah.
The relationship between Ken and Ryu was like awesome. It was a brother.
Did you grow up on anime as well?
Yes, I did. A lot of, but like a lot of the things that I grew up watching, it was all the darker stuff.
So what was like your favorite anime growing up?
Ninja Scroll.
You were not censored. Did your parents know about that one?
Yeah,
your parents know about that one?
They did. I don't think they really
that
watched
was really inappropriate.
It's really inappropriate, but it was so stunning. Like I remember the animation being gorgeous.
That movie disturbed the hell out of me.
Yeah,
I don't get that disturbed, honestly. That disturbed the hell out of me.
The big rock-like creature, like just literally ripping limbs and drinking it. I was like, oh my God, that's going to be branded in my head forever.
There's a lot of sexual discomfort stuff in that movie.
A lot of uncomfortable stuff in there. But that's one. Akira is so cliche, but it's obviously a masterpiece.
If there was an anime you wanted to adapt, is there one that would come to mind?
Oh, Ninja Scroll.
You would want to do Ninja Scroll?
Yeah, because that is epic. That is could be epic.
Have you actually thought about this?
I've thought about it a little, but I don't know. It's like you definitely would need a budget to make that, right? Because it can be very grand. What I do like about it, though, if you peel back all the pieces, is that it is actually quite intimate, that story. It is just about like one guy experiencing these random monsters along the way. So there's a way to reel it all in, but there's still an epic scope at the end, and the whole storyline has a pretty big impact. But yeah, of course, that one is great. I think I truly believe that at one point when they announced 47 Ronin, I was like, oh, they're going to do the Ninja Scroll. They're going to do a live action. If it was
well received, they would have done it.
Yeah. And that movie, unfortunately, didn't do well. Because I saw that as an opportunity to like kind of take a lot of inspiration from Ninja Scroll and just make it live action. But I do think that if that did well, then Ninja could have had a chance.
Yeah. Is there a comic book character? Because you've delved into so much of the comic book world, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, Iron Fist, other stuff, Inhumans, Flash.
Yeah.
Is there a comic book character that you've been like, oh, I would love to adapt this one?
Yeah, and I think it's also another popular one and I believe Matt Reeves is trying to get this one off the ground, if I read that correctly on some fan blog. But Clayface,
Oh, you'd want to do a Clayface?
I mean, that episode is epic. I love that episode.
Of the animated series.
Of the animated series. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's such a great time period. The fact he was like this actor and it's the body dysmorphia of it all. There's so many psychological elements to that particular character that I think is just perfect for live action.
Do you have an actor that you would be like, if I were to fan cast someone as Clayface?
Oh man, that is a little hard. I mean, I've gone back and forth with like Ben Mendelsohn to Evan Peters to Tom Hardy. Like
wow.
They're just like kind of, but it takes an emotional depth that I know all three of those guys can portray.
Yeah.
To make that iconic. I think it has a chance. Like that's why the Joker is so awesome, because of the psychological depth of that character. It's brilliant. I do think Clayface could be not only brilliant in dealing with certain psychological issues, but also on a visual level, it would be really fun to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Because it is, if you can figure out how to do it practically as much as you can, I mean, obviously you would need computer help, but that would be one that I would love to finally see like a real version of it. It
sounds like it would be the amalgamation of literally everything we talked about today.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that's the one character that I think would be just epic in scale. And when I was younger, I wanted to see Gambit, and I finally did.
You finally got a Gambit.
Finally got just a little bit though.
Just a little bit of the Gambit.
So, but I also saw that clip that was released where he looks like he went through the portal.
He might be around still. Yeah.
I think it was too good of a thing not to try to revisit. You know. So anyway, I got to say, like, I know we're not talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, but how great was it to see Wesley?
It was awesome.
I mean, that first movie I think changed a lot for me too.
Do you emote I feel like when someone's in the level you're at, you kind of get used to stuff, and you go to the theaters a lot. I know you do.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself like, what am I trying to say? Okay. Like when Wesley Snipes showed up, I freaked out in the theater.
Yeah.
I was like really loud. Do you get that way with movies?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I still do. I mean, I try my best. It's really hard to, a lot of the times, not to sit and try to analyze the technicalities of everything. Yeah. But if I can just sit as a fan and watch it, yeah, that was a movie that I turned into a fanboy because it was like everything 15-year-old me would have been like, what the fuck? Yeah. Even younger, probably. I don't know when the X-Men animated series was out, 97. So I was
96.
Yeah.
There's a show called 97.
No, yeah, so 96, 96.
You just got to subtract one.
95. And I mean, how many seasons was the original, though?
God, it's 4 or 5. Something like that. 4 or 5, yeah. Not that many.
I remember and that's another version of like animation that they took pretty seriously. Like the first 2 are sad. Like Morph dying, and it was not like happy that those shows were not like just pure silliness. They were like dealing with some harder issues, which was awesome. And Batman the Animated Series too.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
They were beautiful.
They were cinematic.
Yeah, they were like I would believe that an adult can watch it with their kid and still get like the same or a different storyline and have it appeal to them.
Do you recall the first movie you went to where the crowd was cheering a lot?
Terminator 2.
Oh, the crowd was going crazy in that.
Yeah,
theater.
because I remember vividly when I was younger, I was a kid. I had thought we were going to go see Problem Child 2. And I was like so excited to see that movie. And my parents decided to run an audible and said, you know what? We want to go see Terminator 2. And I was mad. I was like really upset. I was like, fine. And then my whole life changed after that movie. I mean, like, I remember going home after that, and that was another one of those, I'm obsessed with behind the scenes stuff, so I had to see how they did it, right? Because it was groundbreaking. But I remember I went home, and I took some tin foil, and I ripped pieces off, put it on a Scotch tape, and then with a red Sharpie outlined the little kernels and, like, put them all over my face, like bullet. Like a little bullet
Liquid
thing.
Terminator wounds?
No, like the Arnold T-800.
Oh, that's what you're going for.
Yeah. So it's like just little pieces with a little red around it. So, and I just ended up becoming completely obsessed.
Had you seen Terminator 1?
No.
So when you saw, did you think Arnold was a bad guy when you were watching it?
Actually, I don't think I did.
You pieced together. You're like, I know the twist. He's all right.
I think, yeah, because it was definitely, obviously the opening is super funny when he goes into the bar. I just thought that was all hilarious. It was in the mall where you knew he wasn't a bad guy.
Right.
So I never, since I didn't know the first one, I wasn't really sure to be nervous that he was a bad guy when he first showed up on screen. And I also remember just thinking Arnold was the coolest guy ever when I watched that movie.
I believe that is I go between Matrix and Terminator. I believe Terminator 2 is my favorite movie of all time. I just rewatched it again like a couple weeks ago.
It's so good. And that's the thing about Cameron is that he's really good at pacing, but he's also good. His action sequences are always so masterful because they're always fluid. They're always shifting. Like you think this is the goal, but oh no, not anymore because this happened. And then like he creates obstacles after obstacles over each other that feel seamless. Yeah. They don't feel like, oh, let's just do this so that we can have this sequence where they're on a collapsing skyscraper. You know, it was story stuff.
There's like emotionality, I feel, in some of his action scenes that semi make me want to be moved to tears. Like when he picks up, when Arnold grabs John Connor off the bike and the chase scene, when he saves him, there's something about that moment that gets to me.
You know the way he grabbed him, and like it's all very brilliant.
Visual protector in that moment.
I mean, I cried at the end of the Terminator 2 when I was a kid. I mean, and then
I still cry. I cry more now.
Yeah, and then just to add a little salt to the wound, having him do the callback to the thumbs up, I was like, oh my God, this movie is fantastic. Yeah.
Theatrical or special edition, which ones do you prefer?
Because of the purity of my experience, I like the theatrical version because that's the way I experienced it the first time. I have watched all the other versions, right? But I think I retain a little bit of a love for that one because to me, at the time I watched it, it was perfect.
Because I watched the special edition recently. And while there's like scenes in there that I do love a lot, like the whole iconic one with the mirror with Linda Hamilton's twin. I love this learning to smile scene. I think that's really fun. There's a lot, but at the same time, I did watch it going, the theatrical one definitely is like a sharper
It's tighter.
experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's some of the hardest things as a director to do is cut something awesome. Because as cool as that one scene might be, pacing is more important.
Yeah.
So that is a real struggle.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh my God, I spent all this time shooting this thing and it's great. It's got that one camera move that I thought was awesome, but you just got to let it go.
What's your favorite franchise? I have a guess.
It's hard because a lot of the ones that I loved turned sour. What were you going to guess?
Chucky.
Oh, well, yeah. That's been the fact that guy has reinvented himself God knows how many times. It's just a testament to the creator. Yeah. I mean, Don Mancini somehow was able to move with pop culture and then recreate it. Yeah. I mean, I prefer the first three because that's what I grew up on. Those are horror films. The first one is straight up a horror movie. Yeah. Like there's not really any comedy in there. Second one introduced a little bit of comedy. Third one, even more. And then somehow he became this iconic, hilarious little murderer. Yeah. I didn't love the Brides of Chucky's, the Seeds of Chucky, all that stuff. I appreciated it, but I still retained a lot of love for the non-stitched up version of Chucky. The opening sequence of Child's Play 2 was specifically something that I just rewatched, where they took the crispy guy and they like turned it into a new thing. So my favorite are the first two. I think the most rewatchable one is 2.
What scares you? Like, when you were a kid, what movie really scared you?
Exorcist scared me.
Exorcist was the one that really got.
I think I get scared of movies that make you be like terrified to like live in your house or something that can happen to your family. Like it's one thing to see a creature feature and you're like, okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to turn into a werewolf kind of thing. But movies like The Exorcist, where it just happens to someone you love and the whole horror scene takes place in a bedroom, your bedroom, I think is the most effective. Like I remember how terrified, and this is into a career where I knew how movies were made, right? But I had, at the time I was in Australia for promotion for Fame, and the distributor over there in Australia was about to distribute this little tiny film that they've acquired with no stars called Paranormal Activity. And they were like, do you want to go to a screening of it? We're doing it for a bunch of distributors. I said, sure. Yeah. So I went in and watched it by myself, not knowing anything. Anything. Wow. That night, I had a hard time falling asleep in my hotel room.
Wow.
Because I was just nervous about sleeping.
Yeah.
You know? So when you can get people to that point where they're just terrified of something that's in their everyday life, it's way more terrifying than any zombie thing could ever be to me.
Yeah.
The suburban horror of it all is, but that movie terrified the crap out of me.
Paranormal Activity, I remember not having seen anything. I just had people being like, have you heard of this movie? Have you heard of this movie? I went to the theater to watch it. It was packed. I said it out loud to someone. I'm like, yeah, I've never heard of it. And then because I said that, every stranger around me started conversing, being like, yeah, I don't know anything about this. People have been talking about it. Like, it's a good movie. Like, that was probably the most word of mouth experience I've ever been to. And it was, now people laugh at it. But that movie terrified the shit out of me.
Yeah, I mean, the first one is just so good. But, you know, talk about another franchise that they kind of oversaturated, you know. But it was magical when it came out. And also, you have to give credit to the OG that even is the reason why Paranormal existed, was Blair Witch.
Right.
I mean, talk about social media without social media.
Yeah.
Like the internet was barely alive, and there was like a website about it, and you thought it was all real.
Yeah.
And all of that promotional stuff made you truly feel like, oh no, this is not like a movie. This is something real. This is a found footage. These are not actors. And back then you couldn't just like type it up, and it was just like, I guess it's real because it looks real. And then, you know, there's articles online about this Blair Witch thing. So that was a brilliant move. I mean, is that arguably the movie that invented found footage?
I would say, John?
Not the absolute first, but it is like the first of major
ones, right? Yeah. Because I couldn't name one before that. But that was the one that I was like, oh my God, this is a great new genre.
Yeah. See, that's leadership, John. I don't know everything.
There you go.
I learned. So what's like the most rewatchable movie for you? What's the one that every time you watch it, you get something new?
Aliens.
Aliens is the pick, huh? Why Aliens?
There's something in that movie that is so... I know every beat of that damn movie. But I feel like there's truly something in there for everyone. It's like such a great genre mashup of a movie with a dumb amount of one-liners that have become iconic. I don't know what it is about that movie, and I am not really sure how to analyze it, but every time I rewatch that movie, I am having the best time.
Yeah.
There's just something in there. I love the first one too, but that's, you know, that's a slower burn. It's a noir.
Yeah.
I can put Aliens on and it's just like, I'll get a little bit of everything, you know?
I think it's unquestionably the superior one. Like, I know there's always a toss up between Alien or Aliens. And for me, Aliens has everything.
Well, you know what? I think, okay, so we're talking about franchises, right?
Yeah.
I think Alien, and maybe this wasn't by design, is arguably the biggest franchise that's actually an anthology. Every movie is like a weird different genre.
Yeah.
Like the first one was like slow burn noir. The second one is like an action-packed one. The third one is a jail movie. You know, the fourth one is a comic book film.
Yeah.
That was the first time it turned into this, like, even the camera moves and everything felt very comic booky.
It was a basketball movie.
Yeah. Ron Perlman with his one-liners. There's one that just doesn't hold up well at all, but what was it? He's like chicks. It's like waste of damn ammo or so. I don't. Yeah. It just I rewatched it and I was like, oh, that certainly does not hold up, and was a dumb line back then even. But that scene where they go and see all the clones is still burned in my memory.
Oh, that's disturbing. I saw that in the theaters with my dad.
But it is when you break down all those movies, it is interesting that they are all different,
except for Romulus.
Romulus, I really had a good time watching Romulus.
I love Romulus.
Yeah.
I did, but that is the one that's like, let's be like a lot of the aliens.
Yeah, I think that just went back to 1 and 2.
Yeah, primarily.
Yeah, which was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah,
especially coming off of the ones that were very long and not as action packed. You know, Prometheus and Covenant were its own thing. I love that Fede just came back and said, you know what, guys, we're going to go right back to where we started. It's going to be an actual horror movie with some action in it, and go from there.
Yeah. I want to make sure before we wrap it, there's a couple of things I do want to just touch on randomly. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, it was popular, it was out. I've never seen it, but people, I'm constantly being told to watch it. I feel like there's been kind of like this long gestating love for this fervor for it that keeps growing.
I agree.
Over time.
It's great. And, you know, I got to give a lot of props to my sister and her husband too. They were the showrunners and wrote that show with a lot of really talented people as well, but they show ran it. And it is a really fun show. Like, it's really fun. You fall in love with the characters. The action is good. You actually give a shit about what happens to the characters because they are a family. I'm sad it got like overshadowed by the big Marvel, like with the movies, and there were certain storylines that they couldn't tell because of it. But I thought they constantly reinvented themselves. Like the Ghost Rider season was awesome.
Did you work on the Ghost Rider season?
I did, yeah. I worked on, I think, all of them.
Oh, really? Yeah. You directed the finale, didn't you?
I did. It was a lot of fun. It was really sad to let that one go because it was a family too. But people who've seen it love it. And a lot of people watched it when it was out. But I think newer fans are now discovering it on Disney+.
Was John was asking earlier, was there anything in your time of directing that you had personally pitched of like, hey, we should do this, try this, you were most proud of?
Yeah, the first time we did a oneer.
Oh, you pitched the oneer.
Yeah, the Chloe Bennett Quake oneer.
Cool.
That was the first time the show did something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did it take to choreograph something like that?
Oh, it took a minute. And I hand it to everyone for allowing me to do it because they were a little nervous about it. They're like, you sure you don't want to shoot another angle of this? I was like, no, because then it'll be used. Yeah. I don't want to do that. It just was one shot. And kudos also to Chloe for nailing it. I mean, I think she hurt a little bit of her elbow or something during that, but she was so on board to make that thing work. And our camera operator was just jumping up, kneeling down. It was exhausting. It was exhausting because it was handheld. So, you know, he didn't have like the gimbal. It was like doing crunches and he's like doing squats and going up and making sure this thing, it was a team effort because there's effects going off too, like squib hits and smoke and all that stuff. But it was great. It was great.
Do you have a favorite memory of working on the finale?
The finale was an emotional experience because, you know, everyone on the show in the episode was saying bye to each other. So shooting that scene where they're all basically going, we're going our separate ways was highly emotional. And we didn't even shoot that last, right? Like we shot that.
Oh, wow. That's weird.
That's the thing is that we had to shoot everything out of order. But that scene was specifically so emotional for everyone because, yes, they're saying goodbye on the show, but it deeply affected. They've been doing that show for 7-8 years. That's a long time to get to know people and work together in hard times to good times. So that was a emotionally draining day.
When you say emotionally draining, are you like watching the monitors crying yourself?
Yeah, when they cry, I cried. That's the thing, you know. And I had been a part of it. Luckily, been a part of it for so long that I had a lot of emotional investment in there too.
Of course.
But yeah, they were, you know, they genuinely liked each other, and it was hard for them to say bye.
What was the actual last scene that was shot for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D?
Oh my God, I can't even remember. I don't. It
It would
probably
be a great soundbite. if you got
yeah,
it.
I don't even know what it was because I think it was like something small. Like, you know, like that's the thing is that you can't really in a perfect world, you design the schedule to be like the last scene of the movie is the last thing we're shooting, but it just never turns out that way. Like, I wish you would need a budget to do something like that, like a big budget to control your schedule to somehow magically fit in that little window. But I can't remember. It might have been like an insert for all I know. I don't remember.
So you have to do the goodbye scene and they're like, all right, I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, exactly.
Weird.
It is weird. It's weird, but it's impossible to schedule anything. So it'd be hard to do that.
To my understanding, with network TV, you have you get less freedom. It's more like a writer's medium. Was there a show though that you did work on? I imagine it might be Brother Son, but maybe outside of Brother Son, where you felt you had a little bit more creative freedom than usual.
Yeah, I mean, besides Brother Son, I was given a lot of freedom on S.H.I.E.L.D. Once I was able to prove myself, like I definitely, because that was my first TV episode.
Oh,
ever.
Okay, cool.
I got a shot.
Wow, that started like everything.
Yeah, that started. So I had to prove myself. A lot of support from my sister and Jet as well, but they allowed me to do oneers and things. And then, but once I was able to be known that I can confidently put something together, I was allowed to explore different types of things. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. And then Brother Son, I had a lot of freedom because Brad was so great and Byron was so great at allowing space for that. And I had a lot of freedom on Teacup as well. You know, Ian McCulloch was really great at being a collaborator. He's another one of those leaders who knows when he doesn't know and allows people to have an opinion and have a voice. And actually, he was like that with everybody.
I'm excited to see the show because, like I said, I've been going through your filmography. And a lot of it is mainly in like this action area. We've talked a lot about horror in the time we've been together. And Teacup is at least being advertised directly as a horror story. It's kind of interesting because it's such a mystery. Yeah. And I heard it's like based on a book, but I hear it's like it's really loose adaptation.
It's pretty loosely adapted.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, the approach is, to me, it feels like a Twilight Zone episode. Which
the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Okay.
It feels like a horror Twilight Zone episode.
And you can't tell us why it's called Teacup.
I cannot.
So there's a mystery as to why it's called Teacup.
Yeah,
I literally tried figuring out when I was watching the trailer.
I will say, as far as the press run has gone, you just cannot answer much because it's all a mystery.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what the hell do I ask? I'm going to talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah,
I don't know what the hell am I going to ask about Teacup.
There's almost nothing I can even talk about with Teacup besides the fact that it comes out.
With directing it, though, does it feel a little bit more exciting for you since it is a horror show? Yeah. And you're producer on it.
Yeah, I have such a deep love for the horror genre because I think it encompasses so many things that I love as far as filmmaking is concerned, but I also feel like it's a fan-first genre as well. Like, fans love horror. They like making horror. It doesn't matter if it's low budget or high budget. There's an artistic obsession with that genre. I'm one of them as well. Like, I'll watch any horror movie that goes from $5 to, you know, whatever, James Wan level movie, like The Conjuring or something like that. And there's something in there for everyone. And I love that it has a lot of subgenres too. Yeah. Like horror has so many little offshoots. Yeah. And you can't really say that about many other genres. Yeah, you'll have like action comedy or buddy comedy or but horror is just like there's all these different venues that you can go. Yeah. So it was great to be able to not only work on the show and explore that side that I already love, but also work under the guidance of people who are very iconic within that genre.
Is there an element to Teacup that, because the trailers are so short, is there an element to it that you can perhaps tease that doesn't spoil it? Like, I'm kind of getting, because a lot of what we've talked about off this podcast has been like Mike Flanagan works and stuff like that, like horror dramas. And because it's such a small cast, I found myself wondering, is this more of like a drama and then horror, or is it horror first and then drama?
I think every good horror movie is actually a drama hidden, because if you don't have the interpersonal relationships that have conflict and have weight and have just texture to it, the horror doesn't matter anymore. So I do think every good horror film I've ever seen is kind of a drama just underneath it all. Which is why I think it works so well, because everyone can relate to those issues. They're very relatable. I think, yes, there's drama in it, a lot of mystery. And when we go full horror, it goes full horror.
Awesome. I can't wait.
K&B did the effects.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that was...
what else have they done?
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead
was the big one. Greg Nicotero. That's his company.
Okay, so this gets violent.
It gets violent. It's bloody.
All right, so I'm going to, John, if you want to help out with some speed round questions, this is the part we can do a clip out for this one. This would be fun.
Okay.
We got the director and producer of Teacup here. We're going to do some hard speed round questions. Okay, what is the most underrated horror movie this year that you've seen?
Underrated horror movie that I've seen?
This year.
Oddity.
Oddity? What's Oddity?
It is, I think it's, I forget, it's, where is it from? I think it's from Ireland. It's an Irish horror film. I watched it on Shudder. U.S. audiences will not be familiar with the cast, but it's so well crafted.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Oddity.
What's your favorite horror movie you've seen this year?
I need to go through all the ones that I've seen, and there's a lot of them. I think Longlegs.
Longlegs. Yeah, I just saw that.
Even if you can consider that a horror movie.
I consider it a horror movie.
Yeah.
It's pretty, there's a horror.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
But it's also like a serial killer movie. So, it would be like calling Silence of the Lambs a horror film, which I guess to some it is. Yeah. But what I loved about that movie was the tonal continuity, which is very hard to come by.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of films was that like you stick to the tone and you just never move away from it.
True. That's a really solid point.
It's hard to do that because a lot of people have so many ideas and it just kind of runs off the rails. But that movie was very solid in making sure that every damn scene was as tense as it was.
Yeah.
And the restraint. I think a lot of that's a really hard in horror is to know when to just not do something.
True.
So I will say that's probably one of my favorite.
What's your favorite performance in horror?
Well, there's a recent one that came to mind. But it's, again, like this is wondering whether or not it's horror or not, but Willa Fitzgerald in Strange Darling.
Everyone keeps talking about this movie.
Is epically great.
Okay.
I mean, I only knew her from the Scream TV show, right? And some little roles here and there, but when I saw that movie, I mean, it is a hell of a performance.
Scariest movie theater experience you've ever had?
Oh, Paranormal Activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
John, you got any?
Yes. What's the best dance movie?
I need to ask.
Oh, the best dance movie?
Text them to you.
Who do you ask horror movie?
But
What's the best dance movie?
I got horror.
I mean, there's two levels. Okay. I really, really love Step Up 2 because it's super fun. But if you go back, All That Jazz,
Okay.
to me, is one of the best dance movies ever made.
Haven't seen that one. Or Step Up 2.
It's Bob Fosse directed it, and it's about mounting a Broadway show, and it's great.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think a great question would have been to ask you, how has your career in dance influenced your directing ability?
Well, I mean, action choreography, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because of my love for the way dance films were shot back in the day with like Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and Stanley Donen and Busby Berkeley, it does lend itself to how action choreography should be shot. I was never a fan of over-covering something. Like, okay, let's just get this from every angle and then we'll edit it together later. So if you watch a lot of the greats from back then on as far as the dance scene, like go rewatch some of those classic Singing in the Rain. It's a wide shot. And they just move with people. And if you have the talent to do it, let them do it.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, so that's that would be.
If you could help any reboot, what would it be?
Event Horizon.
You would helm an Event Horizon reboot.
Yes.
Okay.
I would love to do that. That's a movie. I don't know if that's underrated. I think a lot of people can appreciate that movie, but that is a movie that also left a very big impact on me.
All right.
Yeah.
What horror video game would you want to adapt?
I still would love to adapt Resident Evil in like an actual, like really adapted from the game.
I always thought it'd be so cool to do Resident Evil where you direct it. Let me tell you how to direct your movie. Where you like walk into, you know how there's always like, you can like walk into the next shot. Sometimes you can hear the zombie in the other shot, then you walk in and it's there. Like I love like the way that game was cinematically shot. The first one is terrifying.
Yeah, it was, that was my first survival horror game I've ever played. And I think I loved it because of how cinematic it was. And listen, I've seen all the movies. I think they just took a different turn because the first one didn't really stick to the source material.
No.
I just would want to make the scariest version of Resident Evil.
It deserves it.
Yeah, like action second, not action first.
Sure.
Yeah.
Best non-Chucky horror icon.
Best Chucky
Non-Chucky
horror icon.
Sounds like nunchuck, but
yeah, that actually. Because of my age, the one that was the most impressionable to me was Ghostface.
Yeah, that's where my mind was going to.
Yeah, just because that's another one of those movies that was like a kind of like a very big part of my inspirational, library.
Excellent.
Yeah.
John, I'm going to pick just one more from here. I'm going to go with, what is the best CGI horror effect or sequence in your opinion?
Oh, none. I mean, honestly, that's a horror CG. That's a weird line that I never think works very well. There were some moments in Mama that I thought
that was literally what I was thinking. Was Mama. I was like, if he did, that's so crazy. Yeah,
I will say there were some. But with that said, I've also seen the real actor do the contortion, and I was like, why didn't they just leave it as that? Also, right? But I will say, yeah, that was a good one.
There's the one particular. I've only seen the movie one time in the theaters, but that was like the first good January movie. And I remember there was like something where Mama literally just is on the shot of like the adult, and then suddenly it just turns into a ghost.
Yeah.
Like I remember that being a really terrifying one.
Yeah.
Okay, really, before we go, you've brought up your sister so many times, Marissa.
Yes.
I only got to meet her a few times. She's unbelievably sweet.
Yes, she is.
Told our mutual friend Arshad this too, just recently, about like you and Ashley are like two of the most humble people I've ever gotten to know. And this was like saying this in private. Now I'm putting it in public, so I look good for saying this. But no, I really do mean it, because I'm like, I could dive into all this stuff about you. I'm like, you guys are never the closest to braggadocious about anything ever, nor do you guys ever resemble an ego. And I feel like Marissa's like the exact same way.
Oh yeah,
she is so unbelievable. Like the energy she radiates is so sweet, and it's like you guys are this family that works in cinema. And I'm surprised I didn't ask a single question about you guys being siblings growing up together. Did you bond a lot watching movies together, or did you find a friendship later on in adult life?
We found our friendship mainly later on in adult life because our age gap is quite large. So as we were going through milestones growing up, we always kind of missed, it was a generational gap.
Okay.
But as we got older, we got a lot closer. And I also, I got to say, witnessing her as a leader is something that inspired me heavily because of the way she treats people with respect. And in many ways throughout my life, I think she's been a huge reason on why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because, when I was younger, I just imitated her all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was a dancer. And so I would just want to do what my big sister's doing. So I would mimic her.
Oh, that's cool.
And then that's how I kind of got into everything.
You never really hear about like the older sister being the inspiration.
Yeah. I basically have, tried to follow a lot of the things she's done. And so it's definitely a big part of my upbringing, but also just my inspirations on how to conduct yourself.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to know you both.
No.
Well, don't really know her, but I'm happy to know you. She's got a lovely home too.
Yeah,
that's
great. And now my niece is awesome. She'll be a part of that whole group at some point.
She'll be a film director as well.
I think so. We'll see. She's a great dancer now.
I could honestly ask like a billion questions about these things, and I'll get to ask him in private.
Yeah.
When we go to Not Scary Farm.
Yes, on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
That'll be really fun. Thursday, actually. Please don't go on the different day.
Is it Thursday? Thursday,
yeah. Thursday, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, we see Joker the day before, John.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, you guys get to go to a special screening, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Unlike you, we have connections.
I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't come out on
industry.
Wednesday. I was like, that doesn't come out. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm excited to see how that does.
I'm excited to see it too. Kevin, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you.
I should do the Teacup plug. Teacup, not about Get Out and not really about a teacup. Why is it called Teacup? Tune in October 10th for the 2-episode premiere. It's
Yes.
2 episodes every week, right?
Every week, and then it concludes on Halloween night with the last 2 episodes, which is the ones that I directed.
Oh, you get the Halloween one.
I get the Halloween one when no one's home.
When everyone's out, enjoy Halloween. Like, watch this shit. Thank you, Kevin, for being here. I'll talk with you probably in text relatively soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Oh, my God. So, fuck. We only talked once on text. Ted. Yeah, I was like, it's not Tim. Sorry. Ted, thanks for being here. Thank you, guys. Thank you.